Well, that is amazing, and I am so excited to be here to meet Josh live and virtually in person. So welcome back, everyone. If you are following us on social media, you may have already seen some of this footage from Puerto Rico Ninja Warrior with Josh and Pavan. Pavan, tell us a little bit about Puerto Rico Ninja Warrior and how you met Josh, and introduce our special guest. And before we do, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss any of this exciting content.
Well, actually, I met Josh through my daughter, Elena, and Elena and Josh went to college together in Northeastern. And I think he was 2 or 3 years her senior, so they had a couple of classes together. And Josh told a story. They met at a rock climbing club, and that's how they became friends. And when we did this Puerto Rico Ninja Warrior competition, 2 weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, so basically, I've built in my house, I think, as far as I know, the only Ninja Warrior course in Puerto Rico. Okay, so and it's a regulation Ninja Warrior course that is competition grade. Okay, so I said, if I've built this, might as well give it to the community. Let's do something with it. So we hosted the Puerto Rico's Ninja Warrior first Ninja Warrior Championship. That will the winners of this event moved on to the international championship to represent Puerto Rico. I think it's in June in 2024, June or July 2024 at Anaheim Convention Center. So this, if not for the event, if not for investing in Puerto Rico and investing in the community, these amazing athletes in Puerto Rico, these kids would never get the chance to compete internationally next year. So I think it's all worked out well, and I think we're going to continue this every year, and hopefully we'll love to see the community of athletes and those and inspire kids to just look at life in a different way, look at different problem solving, and try out new adventures that they're not getting exposure to being in Puerto Rico due to the, it is not as privileged as many other parts of the country. I mean, there's a big difference between, say, San Juan and Miami, right? Just the general accessibility of the general accessibility of certain education and sports and development facilities just aren't the same in Puerto Rico as they are in other parts of the country. So I think anybody who has the ability, anybody who can contribute back to the development of kids on this island should do so. And this is just my little part of doing it.
That's an amazing thing you're doing for the community. And I have to ask the burning question that I'm sure is on everyone's mind. So you have this Ninja Warrior course in your home. Is that how you start your morning?
I'm too lazy to start my morning that way.
I have this vision of you doing this course down to get your morning coffee.
If I started my morning that way, I'd probably fall asleep afterwards and take me a couple hours to recover. I've got this rowing machine right next to me here. That's how I start my morning. I just I'll get my blood flowing on the rowing machine.
All right. So Pavan, introduce our guest today.
So our guest, Josh Levin, amazing person, an American Ninja Warrior champion, and so gracious to give us an hour of his time to talk about his experience, about his championship mindset, how he dealt with the ups and downs. And not only is he a great athlete, but he's also an amazing intellect. And his life today is converting all of that, all of his lessons, both from his physical training and from his mental training and all of his education, and converting all of that into a platform where he can give back and teach the next generation of children. So this is a person who could have gone into industry and been very successful, made a lot of money. Instead, he chose to go into giving back, into teaching, and is immensely successful and has helped so many kids find new. I think that the number one role of a teacher is not to teach you any other skill other than to show you, so that other than for you to learn and to know that you can do whatever sets your mind to it, and most importantly, that you learn that nothing is beyond reach. And what better person to demonstrate that nothing's beyond reach than a rock climber and a ninja warrior. So here we go. American Ninja Warriors, how long you were doing that, and what was you how high did you get on the ranking?
I made it all the way to stage 4, which was the top 5 that year.
Okay, so you made it to top 5, right?
Yep.
So what kept you from being number 1?
It's kind of hard to say without like breaking an NDA, actually. I did my best I could. I'm really happy with how it went. And the rest is reality TV show editing. So I'll leave it at that.
Right. So in other words, it's a reality TV show. So you also gotta be the one that the audience wants.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So American Ninja Warriors is more reality TV than it is sport.
I'd say it's a good mixture. A lot of the time it is very much sport driven, namely by the obstacles. And this is actually inspired by the original Japanese show, which is called Sasuke. That one originated in Japan in the late 90s and was seen as this like really fun, cool, but very serious obstacle course as compared to the other shows that were at the time, like Takeshi's Castle, and the American version of that would be like Wipeout. This was seen as a much more serious endeavor, and I think the goal of it is actually to try and like complete the course to achieve total victory, and that has roots in mountaineering, which is very different than other reality TV shows where, Survivor, for example, you just want to be the number one contestant, and that's it. On American Ninja Warrior, it's actually much more similar to maybe like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where you don't win the $1 million until you answer the $1 million question, or in this case, defeat the $1 million obstacle. So for the entire 15 seasons of American Ninja Warrior now that it's been airing, there's actually only ever been 3 contestants ever to win $1 million in the entire 15-year seasons that it's been running. So the whole idea is not about like how much you beat other people or other people beat you. It's actually much more about overcoming obstacles as a whole. And the whole component of the reality TV show comes into play where NBC, in order to make it more Americanized by adapting and remixing this Japanese TV show, decided to talk about not just the obstacles in the course, but how competitors overcome obstacles in their own lives. So this is the big piece of it where it's all about telling a really powerful story. And if you have, best case scenario, you make it on American Ninja Warrior, you do well in the show, you have about a minute to talk directly to 7 million people and tell one story directly to them. And if you have that opportunity, what do you want to say?
What did you say? You had that 1 minute opportunity.
I did, yes. It was an incredible opportunity. I'm super grateful to have had the experience of being on American Ninja Warrior. And to me, the part that really resonated with me is being able to uplift others in your own life. And for me, that was my very first rock climbing coach. Her name was Stacy Culver, and she's the one that got me into rock climbing in the first place. So I've been doing American Ninja Warrior since about 2016 on the show, and before that, maybe 2013 or 14. So about a decade or so of Ninja Warrior experience, but my entire life I've been doing rock climbing. And that's my big sport. So when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I went to a amusement park close to where I lived, tried out rock climbing. I loved it, but I was also really shy and was not able to make connections with other people my own age very well. And so when I went to the rock climbing gym for the first time and I was in this big group class, I was really scared and didn't feel comfortable being around the other kids that were all running around, causing chaos, all the different things. So fortunately, the coach that was there, her name is Stacy, she was the one that came up to my parents afterwards and said, "Hey, like, looks like Joshua was maybe a little bit shy today, but he definitely looks like he also has a lot of interest in this sport and loves it and has a lot of passion for it. And what I'd like to do is offer him some private lessons to hopefully increase his skills, increase his strength, and therefore increase his confidence in the ability to be able to believe in himself." And so Stacy was the one that actually believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself, and took me under her wing to actually encourage me to get better at this activity, in this case, rock climbing. So over the course of the next couple years, she helped me get better. I got stronger. I got more skilled. I was able to actually overcome some obstacles in my own life to figure out how to actually, work through problems, communicate with others. And rock climbing is an individual sport, yes, but you also have to collaborate in order to overcome a lot of the things you encounter in rock climbing, very similar to Ninja Warrior. You see the contestants cheering each other on, and there's a reason for that. It's because you can't actually defeat the course with no help. You have to be able to work together with others and collaborate in order to achieve these goals, very similar to other areas of mountaineering, rock climbing, engineering. All of these have to do with collaboration. So she's the one that really helped me encourage my journey and my path, and was probably the biggest influence in my life, hands down. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed with incurable lung disease in 2004. And what ended up happening was she got put on the wait list for a double lung transplant. And these double lung transplants are very rare. They're exceedingly expensive and risky. And the survival rate after, I think, even if you get one successfully, the survival rate for surviving long term is very, 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 very low. And I think it was usually the life expectancy after you get one is about 5 years. So Stacy got one. She not only got one, but like came back and got extremely strong and fit again afterwards. She was competing in the U.S. transplant games, in badminton and ping pong. She was rock climbing with a 50-foot long oxygen cord tied to her because she had to have additional oxygen when she was climbing. And she really kind of like took that challenge on and thrived and survived for about 14 years afterwards. She unfortunately did pass away in 2018, which was a hard time for myself and my family. But I'm really glad to know that like she was someone that mattered a lot to me, and being able to take the lessons that she gave to me and pass those forward was something that I took really seriously. And that was the story that I shared with American Ninja Warrior.
And actually, and you are acting on that because you're now a teacher.
That's correct.
Yes. So I think you went to Northeastern and got an engineering degree, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So what kind of engineering?
So my background in engineering was mechanical engineering. I did my undergraduate at Northeastern University, graduated 2017. That's how I got involved and interacted with Lena for the first time, because she was also involved with the rock climbing club that we started up there. And my passion is for solving problems and building things. That's the thing I love to do the most. And so when I was a little kid, I loved building with Legos and playing around and creating new structures. Star was a huge impact and influence on my life. And I think over time, that gradually morphed into an interest and passion in math and science, and then particularly physics, and then particularly like classical physics. But I also love the application of it, and seeing how you could take something that was some kind of challenge or problem in the real world and solve it using engineering was really interesting to me. So that's where I went and pursued an engineering degree at Northeastern in mechanical engineering. The thing about Northeastern, if you're not familiar already, and as a parent of a Northeastern alum, I'm sure you are, is that Northeastern is a place where you not just go and take your classes and you study and you maybe do some side projects if you want to, but you actually have a lot of applicability through the co-op program, which is a 6-month internship program that pretty much all students participate in at least twice. I did my third co-op. I did 3 different co-ops over the course of my time at Northeastern. So how that works out is it's built into your curriculum. You take your classes, and then for 6 months, you have no classes. You just work with the company, developing much bigger projects than you would as a traditional summer intern. And so for me, that it meant doing 3 different co-ops all over the country and actually traveling around the world a little bit as well. First one being at a small manufacturing company outside of Boston. Second one being at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, working on the Mars Perseverance rover, which landed on Mars in February 2021. And then my third co-op being as a manufacturing design engineer at Apple, where I worked on the 2016 MacBook Pro.
Wow, that's exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Okay, so it took all that knowledge engineering, and obviously, I think it actually makes perfect sense that a rock climber is a mechanical engineer.
There's a lot of engineers in rock climbing.
And so with all this knowledge and education, you could basically have done anything you chose. You could have started your own company. You could have, built and, worked at Apple, worked at JPL, whichever. But instead, you chose to give back and educate children. So, talk to me about that decision. Why you made that decision? I think we kind of know why, but it'd be interesting for you to restate that. And what's that journey been like?
Sure. So it all kind of flowed together in a way that maybe I wasn't expecting, but makes sense, obviously, in hindsight. When I finished my undergrad in mechanical engineering in 2017, that was actually right when climbing was included as an official Olympic sport in the Tokyo Olympic Games. So it was a huge, huge deal for everyone in the climbing world, something we've been working towards for a very, very long time. And with the money that I'd saved up and the ability to actually go and travel and put myself on a stage where I could actually have a shot at making the Olympics for the first time ever in our sport, that was an opportunity that was too big to pass up. It was incredible. So the period of time right after I graduated 2017, all the way up until basically January 2020, I put everything else in my life on hold and put all of my chips into one basket, which was to try and qualify for the Olympic Games. So that was a really cool experience. I traveled all over the world, got to meet lots of cool people, see some really cool places, competed for the US national team to try and make enough points to make it into the top 20, which was the amount of people that were able to compete at the Olympic Games from around the world. So it was very, very difficult to qualify. And ultimately, I did not quite make it. I ended up placing 7th at the US Olympic trials in 2020 in January, right before COVID hit. The top 5 moved onwards from that. And the next step, actually, it might have been top 4 or top 5, but I placed 7th. So it was a couple of spots out, unfortunately. But the thing about me is that I also like to pursue something not only athletic, but also intellectual or academic at the same time. And it's for me something that keeps my brain stimulated. And right around the time when I decided to make that switch into like pursuing rock climbing full time after I graduated college. That was when one of my former high school teachers reached out to me, and he is working at the school that I currently work at, which is a school in Menlo Park, California, called Synapse School. And the school has a huge focus on engineering, but also social and emotional learning. And they also have a neuroscience research center that's partnered with Stanford University. So they clearly do a lot of different things at a very high level for it being a preschool through 8th grade institution. And one of the things they do is they have a 10,000 square foot engineering and design center, makerspace. And one of the things they love to do, because it's all project-based learning around themes, is design super cool curriculum so that students get really excited about whatever they happen to be learning that term. So in 2017, right when I was beginning my journey on this rock climbing adventure, the teacher who I'd known before, who had moved to this school, he reached out to me. His name's Brian. He said, "Hey, just a heads up, we're at this school. We have project-based learning here. We have this huge engineering design center. And what we want to do is design a physics and science curriculum that has to do with the physics of American Ninja Warrior. And what we want to do is also build our own Ninja Warrior obstacles. Do you want to be a guest instructor for this class?" And I thought to myself for about a tenth of a second. I was like, yes. That
So
sounds incredible.
Back for a second. So what's the name of the school again?
The school is called Synapse School, like synapse in the brain.
Is it a public school? Is it charter?
It is a private school.
It's a private school. Okay. And where's it located?
In Menlo Park, California.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
that's like Menlo Park. That's like Silicon Valley area, right?
it is dead
Yeah.
center of Silicon Valley. Absolutely. Yes.
Right. So
So
it's no coincidence that a school called Synapse is located in Silicon Valley.
yeah, very unsurprising, I would say. But yeah, so they reached out to me. I got involved. We did many iterations of this project, which is currently going on now. But the first iteration, we designed our own American Ninja Warrior obstacles through the lens of different physics and engineering concepts. And the cool part was I got to teach all the cool, fun physics concepts that I learned in school, but using these examples of American Ninja Warrior as, video reference if you're talking about conservation of energy or Newton's laws or momentum. And each time we do this, the kids would just get super excited because it's something that's really relevant and obvious and visual that they can have as a reference point. So of course, then because it's project-based, they were then able to kind of step back from the in-classroom learning component and design, create, and construct their own original Ninja Warrior obstacles from scratch. We've gone through multiple iterations of this project, and the first time it was just kind of like mini models, some marble tracks. Second time around, we actually developed a full-scale Ninja Warrior course, which to me was one of the coolest courses I've ever been on, some of the coolest obstacles I've ever been on. And then the third time around, the theme that year was actually centered around disability rights and accessibility. So the students actually designed kind of a para Ninja Warrior obstacle course for athletes who either had mobility impairments and wheelchairs, visual impairments, or were on, yeah, I think it was mobility, visual impairment, and I want to say some kind of neurological impairments as well. And so each obstacle was like tailored to the specific disability they were learning about and discovering. So the first one was like a wheelchair merry-go-round sort of obstacle where you had to navigate your wheelchair through this like moving disc. The second one was all about it had a rock climbing wall, but you had to you had to put a blindfold on if you were you had full vision, and the rock climbing holds had each of them like a little sensor hooked up to them that if you pressed a button, it would emit a noise. So you actually could reach for the hold you were trying to find. And then each of these different obstacles were again focused on not only the physics and biomechanics they were learning about, but also on this idea of disability rights and making obstacle courses accessible as far as like para competition goes, and bringing this whole new lens to Ninja Warrior that I don't think has really been tried before in many other capacities. So that's been really cool, and we're redoing this project for the fourth time this upcoming term at Synapse.
Well, that's actually really interesting because AngelAi is a sponsor of two para athletes.
That's right.
Yeah. So one is Alili Medina, who is, I think, partially blind in one eye and blind in the other eye. The other athlete is Sean Rengot, and he is, I think, partial amputee on one leg. So they're actually Alili amazing. She won the gold medal again, second gold medal in a row. She's only 14. And Sean, I think, came in 5th or 6th on the surf championship. So which is, quite significant. Didn't make it to the top, but still is on an international stage. He did really well. So one of the things that about the para athletes is in many ways they're actually, I would say, mentally superior than non-para athletes, because they have to go through so much more, right? Just to be convinced to be athletes, right? When the world around them says, well, yeah, you're handicapped, you have a disability, be satisfied with what you are. And then so they just have a whole different level of drive. I just love being around them because the energy is so incredibly contagious with the para athletes that you just, even when you're around if you're around the best of the best on, regular athletes, these guys exceed that from an energy perspective.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I mean, one of the cool things about American Ninja Warrior specifically is that if you look at the TV show, the course is the same for everybody, which is, I think, a pretty bold statement. Like men, women, and para athletes compete in the same course. I think it's specific to certain types of disabilities, and this is why we did our project based on a variety of disabilities, because that people with disabilities that compete on American Ninja Warrior generally have like lower limb amputations, or hidden disabilities. And I think it's much more of an interesting challenge to think about, okay, well, what are categories of disability that like could not be represented here, such as blind athletes, or athletes with other types of mobility impairments, such as in a wheelchair. Like the zeroth obstacle of American Ninja Warrior is you have to walk up some steps. And like by definition, that is inaccessible. So it's cool to rethink this idea of disability, and accessibility in terms of like the design of a course. But I think you definitely have a spot on piece where the people in the disability community who are athletes and training for these big competitions like have a really strong community and sense of purpose and fire. And I think the other piece that I have certainly learned over the course of interacting with them, through a nonprofit, called, I'm just gonna make sure I get this right. This is the Adaptive Climbing Group out of New York City, but they also have chapters in Boston, which is where I'm volunteering with them. And this is an all-encompassing adaptive climbing group for people with a variety of different types of disabilities to engage with rock climbing. And one of the big learnings that I feel like I learned as an able-bodied person, is that the thing that the people in the disabled rock climbing community, feel very strongly about is they don't want to be looked at as quote unquote inspiration, because they have a disability and also do a sport. I think it's something that like, well, yeah, I'm a human being. I can do things, and this shouldn't be your, aka like our, able-bodied people's inspiration to see like, wow, you're doing so many amazing things. You can like go to the grocery store or like do a rock climb. Like they don't want to be looked at as people first and foremost. And the big deal about being able to empower yourself through these sports is huge, absolutely. And I think it also comes back to the idea of design. Like when we are designing our Ninja Warrior course or rock climbing gym or place of work or transit or home, how can we think about changing the paradigm of the way we believe the world to operate, and design for universal access and think about ways in which we can incorporate more, pieces that are adjustable or built in. So that way people who have mobility impairments can make it up a ramp. And this not only helps people with mobility impairments, but also helps like families pushing strollers. Like this is an example at museums, when as soon as you pass the ADA in the 90s, like people with strollers are much more easily able to like bring babies into wherever public access thing you want to have. So for me, it was a pretty big paradigm shift to think about design in this way, as opposed to just being like, wow, disabled people, they're amazing when they do sports. Like, yes, but they're humans and they're people, and they want to be viewed as that first and foremost, from my experience. And the big thing for me was understanding, oh, how can we now change the systems in where we work and live and operate to really make it more universal, not only for people on the margins, but for people in general who will be able to appreciate these opportunities. I mean, the easiest one off the top of your head would probably be something like closed captioning. Closed captioning is everywhere now, and that's because of people with hearing impairments, my mom included, pushing for more universal access to captioning in all walks of life, and especially in the technologies we use today.
Yeah, and I think closed captioning is also so accessible because of the AI technology that makes it so easy to do.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, before in the old days it had to be done by hand.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite a challenge.
Yeah.
But so talk to me about, so you had your first experience teaching at Synapsis College or Synapsis School, and now you went from that, and I guess that inspired you. So now you're a full-time teacher for children, right?
Yep.
So tell me about what is that like, and what are you teaching, and the value you see that you're giving, not just to kids, but how has that changed you from a different path you could have taken?
This is just, I think, one part of my career is like, Josh is this or this or this. Like I can kind of pick and choose pieces of which I want to learn over time. And that has evolved from Josh as the rock climber, Josh as a Ninja Warrior, Josh as an engineer, Josh as a teacher, Josh as an advocate for, whatever need or value I see to be important enough to put my voice behind. And I think the piece that I'm looking at right now is this specific job is actually a new role that Synapse opened up in 2022. And the role itself is actually a revamped computer science curriculum. Again, my background is in mechanical engineering, not necessarily computer science, but they opened up this role as a computing and engineering specialist to kind of rethink what it means to learn about computers in this part of the 21st century, where we do have AI. And I think the big question is like, how do you teach computer science where in a world where ChatGPT exists? Like that's a really valid question. I think it's worth pausing and interrogating and asking big questions over. So we did a kind of a relook at everything. And one of the big pieces that we took away was that there's a lot of really good curriculum out there that helps students learn not just how to program in Python or C++ or JavaScript or whatever, but teaches fundamentals of computing and problem solving in general. And that lens is a idea or a kind of like framework called computational thinking. So that is the class I'm currently teaching, computational thinking, and we broadly define that as problem solving, but through the lens of like how can we solve problems with computers. So a lot of the curriculum we did actually the first year revolved around this idea of quote unquote unplugged computer science. So learning about computer science with no computers at all. And there's a really great open source resource that is just called CS Unplugged. It is from a university research group in New Zealand. They did a lot of really good programming and curriculum development and really put out a lot of cool ideas about how to teach kids about binary numbers and sorting and algorithms and debugging and these like basic concepts like abstraction, for example, that really to build a foundation so that if you want to learn any programming language or jump into ChatGPT or build a computer yourself, like you're going to have the tools that you need to do that, not necessarily the programming skills. But like those change so drastically and so rapidly that it's almost, I don't want to say it's not worth learning. It is worth learning. But it's much, much, much more with learning the skills and building blocks that go into those. So we did a whole couple terms on building up our competencies through the lens of like which of these different pieces we want to learn about: algorithmic thinking, debugging, abstraction, decomposition, data analysis, pattern recognition, modularity, and so forth. And from there, we then, of course, utilizing our engineering design center makerspace, we built some really cool projects out of that. One of which was like a data science / modularity piece with the theme last year was all about meditation and mindfulness. We built this like massive mindful spaces for each class, built their own. They're like 10 foot by 10 foot by 10 foot. Each of them have a different components. And the whole goal was to like build in something together so that each class was thinking about modularity in this really interesting way. And then the third term last year, which is probably one of my favorite projects or like lessons we've had so far, we delved into something called graph theory or network science, which is something you like don't learn about until like you're a third year computer science major in university. But like this all has to do with like connecting networks, any kind of social network, any kind of transit network. All these kinds of network type problems are something that's really cool and really fun for the kids just to have like literally connect the dots on a pencil and paper, and you can solve these really cool logic puzzles going all the way from the original problem in that area, which is called the Seven Bridges of Königsberg. I did that with like my second and third graders a couple months ago. It was really fun. You can like walk across these lines, try and figure out, do the bridges connect in this way, all the way up through deciding whether or not something has a different path, or whether you can color in maps with 4 colors or less, or finding pathfinding algorithms, just like how Google Maps works, Dijkstra's algorithm. And then the last one that we did was a very heavily edited and very carefully edited watch of the math problems included in the movie Good Will Hunting. So I had to be really careful with my editing and showing which parts of that movie to watch, obviously. But the math problems that this theoretical, fictional genius in this movie like solves are just network problems that middle school students can solve in 20 minutes or less. So that was a lot of fun. And then from there, we then have really pivoted into this last term where with the like inclusion and availability of something like ChatGPT, we said, all right, we're going to pause the foundational groundwork stuff and just really embrace this brand new technology and see where we can run with it and just give the students all the tools possible and see what they can build with it. So we partnered up with a third-party organization called Flint, which has a version of ChatGPT built inside of it. that is like safe and accessible for students, with increased like privacy guardrails and accessibility for teachers. And we basically said, hey, like, okay, the new theme this year is all about ocean theming and the sea, and we want to have you use ChatGPT in this way. So what we're going to do is provide scaffolding to say, hey, like this term, you are going to remix a classic video game, think Pong, checkers, tic-tac-toe, chess, Flappy Bird, Doodle Jump, anything like that. And what you want to do is remix it using ChatGPT, but it has to be ocean themed. So we had a lot of like Flappy Fish type games, or like, I don't know, what was it? Minesweeper, but the sweeper of the mines are actually sharks or something like that, or Pong, but you have to like eat the shark things as you go around, or Pac-Man where you're eating, I don't know, different types of like sea enemies or something like that. Yeah, and so the kids with literally zero programming experience could literally just type into ChatGPT like code Pong, and then it codes Pong in 30 seconds. And then you can modify it from there, going through lots of different iterations and problem solving and debugging, to get to a point where they actually had fully working games by our presentation day a couple weeks ago, just using ChatGPT. So started out, of course, with the foundations of like, how do we solve problems with computers? No computers at all. And now we fully embrace this whole new technology, generative AI, and have the students design their own games using this technology and see where we can apply it moving forward.
Yeah, my theory on this, or my perspective on ChatGPT and generative AI on engineering and computer science, is that I've coded a lot. I've done a lot of coding myself, and 90%, 95% of the work you do coding is grunt work. And when you're coding, you're like, there should be a way to automate this, right? So ChatGPT and products like that, they eliminate the manual work of coding, right? So you can focus on the actual engineering of it. So, for example, before Satoshi's paper came out on solving the double spend problem, right? You couldn't go into ChatGPT and say, and say, solve the double spend problem. It's not going to create something original math proof like Satoshi did, or it's not going to create the probably private key algorithm, right? So that takes real mathematics, takes real engineering to come up with those things. And once you have those, then yes, you can have something like ChatGPT create the code to manage it, to do the mechanical aspects of it. But the creative idea of how to solve a problem, right? So ultimately, when you're teaching an engineer to solve a problem and come up with new solutions. You're not teaching them to regurgitate existing solutions, and that's all generative AI is really doing, is regurgitating in new combinations.
Yeah, that was something that was, for me, really eye-opening, because the project that actually inspired this project I made for the students was exactly what you're talking about. Taking something that maybe has existed in the past, but then utilizing these new tools, which are a regurgitator of sorts. That's exactly what ChatGPT does. It takes the internet, boils it down, and tries to predict the next word. We did a lot of activities revolving around like exactly how ChatGPT works. So I'm not delving into like exactly the nitty-gritty, but just getting a feel for like, oh, it's not magic. It's just a really good prediction engine based on its learning. And I think the cool part for me was taking, again, one of the projects that we'd done in the past with the graph theory, network science, and one of the most famous results from that field, if you're familiar with it at all, is this something called graph coloring, which you can think of just as like, I mean, this has to do like technically with like, how radio frequencies can work and assigning different types of scheduling problems. But the fun one is actually just learning about how you can color in maps. So think about a map of the United States, for example, and the question is, if you were to color the map of the United States, including Puerto Rico, with crayons, Sharpies, whatever, so that each state you can kind of tell apart. There's not like, Texas and Oklahoma can't both be blue, because then it would be confusing. You want to make sure that states that are touching don't have the same color. Like, that's the basic question. So yeah, you could use 50 different colors and, multiple for Puerto Rico, Guam, etc. for territories. But that would be too many because then there's areas that don't touch. Like Puerto Rico does not border Florida. Like Texas does not border California. So you could reuse colors in this way. So there was actually a question that was put out in the 1800s about not just the United States, but any map. How many colors do you need to color any map? And this was a question that actually went unsolved for more than 120 years because people tried to prove it, disprove it. It was like this whole debate back and forth. And it turns out, spoiler warning, that for any map, anywhere in the world, as long as like a 2D regular map, you only ever need 4 colors to color any map, which is like truly mind-blowing because you're like, wait, surely you need more than that at some point. And it turns out, no, you only ever need 4. So we did a lot of activities around this during our network science graph theory lessons. But what I realized is like, wait, this is actually a really cool opportunity to make like a puzzle that you could solve kind of every day, similar to like Wordle or Connections or anything that the New York Times puts out. That would be just a randomly generated map, and you have to try and color it in every day. So that way each of the different regions or states doesn't have the same color. So that was my own personal side project that I worked on over the summer and just finally put out my first like 1.0 version of. But you can play on it if you want to check it out. I called it Colorize. So if you go to playcolorize.com, there's a new puzzle every single day. And you click on the different states or regions, and it's totally random. I have no idea what it's going to be tomorrow or even today. I haven't played yet. And if you try it out, you can click on them, try the different colors. And if you have multiple that have the same color, you're not going to be able to win until you make them all different colors. But the gamified version that I tried to build in was like a lives kind of mechanic where similar to how in Wordle Connections, you don't have unlimited tries, you only have a certain finite number. So what I did is instead of when you're coloring it in, you can kind of like change the colors as you want. If you go back and recolor one of the things that you'd already colored in, you lose a life. So you only have 4 corrections you can make, and then you lose that day's game. But of course, you can play again the next day, and that's the point of the whole idea. And so what I ended up doing was, I don't have any experience programming in JavaScript or CSS or that much HTML. Like I've played around with it. I had a middle school class once on HTML. That was great. But I had no real programming experience with this. And so what I was able to do was say, hey, I have this cool idea. I have this problem I want to solve. And my goal is to build this in a website. I can just now go to ChatGPT and ask it to create it for me. And of course, my learning lesson from this was that you can't just ask for exactly what you want and expect it to deliver the whole thing right at once. You have to go through and do step by step, lots and lots of iteration to figure out exactly how to get from step A all the way to step, 4,522. So really cool problem process, using the tools that are available and being able to like leverage the things that I was excited about and had curiosity and creativity for, but in a way that I would never have been able to access without years of training that would have gone into like learning these very minute programming languages.
So bottom line is you build a sophisticated web game using ChatGPT without ever writing a line of code.
Yes, correct.
Just you had to put the code together. After you generate the code, you have to pull it together. So you have to have some understanding of coding, but you didn't actually get into the weeds of the coding.
Yeah, I will. The only asterisk I will throw out there, and yes, absolutely correct, is that of course with ChatGPT, like it'll do 95% of the work, and then the 5% that's left over are like the really hard problems that it does take going through every single line of code, knowing it front to back, intimately, emotionally, and then banging your head against the wall for 2 days, realizing there was one thing that you had to like switch that around, and then it works perfectly. So
yeah, the debugging and basically architecting it all together.
Exactly.
But that 5%, whether you code it by hand or whether you code it with ChatGPT, that 5% still exists.
Oh yes, always.
Right. So you basically are confirming my theory is that every engineering firm, every software engineering firm out there now with the new AI tools, their productivity has just increased, by 20-fold, right? Because 95% of the work is now going to be done by generative AI, and only leaves 5%. Right. So that means if if you have a team of 10 engineers, it's like you have a team of 200 engineers.
Yeah.
And you'll get better quality work because there's also I forgot the name of the theory. You probably remember this. There's a theory in computer science that says that more engineers you add to a project, the slower the project gets developed.
I mean, like sort of law of diminishing marginal returns, economic sense, too many cooks in the kitchen, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah.
There's actually a term for that, and I don't remember offhand. But this way, you're just making each engineer 20 times more productive.
Yep.
And there's some catches to it. I mean, we're a commercial engineering enterprise. There's some catches to it. You got to be careful when using ChatGPT generated code and how you use it for a commercial product.
Yeah.
So not quite that simple, but I think really, what you're doing and you're teaching, the way you're teaching the children is extremely important. I think all schools need to embrace this because you're about teaching kids how to really understand the nature of things and how to apply it. Okay, and how to understand it conceptually, as opposed to how to cut and paste and just get it to work.
Yeah.
Right. Too much of teaching is just about getting the homework done or getting through the test, right? And just passing the obstacles.
Yep.
Right. To complete the course, or is it just passing the obstacles to complete the course, or is it mastering, the course?
Right. And I think that there's a difference between what in like a traditional school setting, for example, you have these obstacles, but like, what is the goal of those? Like, what's the goal of a homework assignment? Why assign homework? Like this is something that like I've thought about a lot. And in my class, we don't have homework ever. Like that's not what I aspire to do in the way that I teach. It's all project based. So everything we do is a classroom group project, sometimes individual, sometimes in groups of 2, 3, 4, whatever. And the skills that I want them to develop are, critical thinking, problem solving, but also like working with teams and how to delegate and manage tasks and figure out, we have this big goal. We have no idea how to solve it. Let's try and break it down. And there's not like, well, I have to do this assignment and this assignment, this assignment. And I mean, there are pieces of it that I've learned when I did my master's in education and learning here at the school that are really important as well, as far as how scaffolding goes. And the pieces that ended up being really valuable is being able to.
Yeah, that actually, I think you hit the nail on the head. That is the world we live in the future. That is the AI world, is being able to create, focusing on the creative part, focusing on the communication part. And so you're working right now with very small children, right? Like preschool. Yeah. Are you in a private school or is it a public school?
Yeah, so it's a private school, independent. So my majority of my work is with middle school students. I have a class with them every day, starting in about an hour, actually. And the bulk of my work is with, again, students 5th grade through 8th grade, so 10 to 14 years old, roughly. But then I do one-off lessons. So like yesterday, I did a lesson in binary counting with our 2nd and 3rd graders, and we'll do another one today with our preschoolers, where we'll just have like these giant cards that have little dots on them, and they flip them over and say like, oh, this is on, off, on, which is, 101, whatever number in binary that corresponds to. So we do.
You're teaching preschoolers that 1 + 1 is 0.
Exactly. That's how it works. So yeah, it goes all the way.
They're going to be scarred for life now.
It's going to be great. Yeah.
Okay, so do you see like this kind of teaching approach? How has it impacted? I don't know if you've been doing it long enough to have the data yet, but how has it impacted the trajectory of kids in, instead of going from I hate math and science to I love math and science?
Right. I mean, it's too early to really say, I would guess. But my goal has been to, again, de-emphasize like the math and science necessary like parts of that, because I think it's very easy for students, especially middle school age, to start self-identifying like, I am a math person, I am not a math person. And in fact, one of the competencies of our math curriculum at this school is everyone is a math person. We should embrace this whole idea that like there's not math people and not math people. Like everyone is involved with math, in whatever capacity that you choose to be involved in, but we're actually going to bring it back. Mistakes are beautiful, focusing on the process over the product, that kind of stuff. And I try and de-emphasize even the math and science part in my class as well, and focus on just like, all right, what's a cool problem? How do we solve it? Like that's the basis of like what I aspire towards with the curriculum that I develop. So like, that goes back to how do you solve this like network problem that we're doing in class? How do you make sure that we're going from A to B as quickly and efficiently as possible? A couple of days ago, we did looking at like the idea of the Turing tests and the Turing machine. So like, how do you pass around a secret message that everyone can see, but only the people who know the code can read? And trying to think about ways in which taking a problem and trying to solve it can be fun and interesting and engaging and exciting. That to me is much more important than saying like, let's learn about math and science. Like I think that's fun and cool and valuable, but for me, the most important part is getting students excited about solving problems.
Yeah. So last question, and I know you got to go soon. So you really had your heart set on going to the Olympics and rock climbing, but you missed it by about 2. Obviously we all know, we've all been disappointed. We all know how that felt, but how do you lift yourself up after that?
That's a really good question. I think for me, it was looking for not only the next obstacle to overcome, but things that I was curious about or interested in, and really delving into that. Because for me, there's like a lot of things in my life I've been really passionate about, and that's been in a lot of ways, very easy to like follow. Rock climbing, Ninja Warrior, engineering, what have you. But I think the next piece for me was like, what am I curious about? What are some problems out there that are really big and really difficult, and how can we think about solving those? And so at that point in time, that was, January 2020, when I missed out in the Olympic trials by 1 or 2 spots. And for me, the next piece was thinking about how can I make my own positive change in the world? And that looked like a lot of reflection and journaling. And of course, then COVID hit. So then I was trying to pivot on my own to figure out what the next steps would be. And the things that I kept on coming back to was this idea of learning. And learning being such a key tool, not only to understand how science, engineering, technology works, but also understand the relation between learning and technology, learning and like a lot of the big social movements that were happening at the time, Black Lives Matter movement going on, and understanding history and race and context and disability rights, obviously with our Ninja Warrior project. And climate change, and understanding how to like think about education as a system can or has existed for a super long time, to like put forth this model of industrialization, going back to the Industrial Revolution. Like how do we mass produce people that can work in factories? And we're way beyond that now in this day and age. So how can we reassess our model of education, which is a system, to incorporate these new ways of thinking and learning and solving problems? And I think for me, that ended up being the case where I then, through a lot of like really great resources and people who gave me phenomenal advice, applying for a master's in education, which I did at Harvard University, finished up in 2022, and understanding how to like think about things that I was curious about learning and apply those to see what are the next problems that I can solve. And now that has led me to this position here where I'm teaching kids how to solve problems.
Okay. Last thing, we got a couple minutes left. You were at my house in Puerto Rico for the Puerto Rico Ninja Warrior competition.
Thank you for inviting me.
What are your thoughts about the competition, and what are your thoughts about Puerto Rico?
Oh man, both were great. It was so much fun. It was such an honor to be out there. I think the big piece was that this event, this competition, this experience for not just myself and not just ever like the kids and not just the adults that were there, but like it in and of itself is going to be a catalyst. It sparked something because I got to see all the kids that were out there from, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old up to pros competing in the course, getting super excited, pushing themselves, overcoming obstacles, having some failures, picking themselves up, trying again, and realizing that like they're capable of doing much more than they previously thought. And I think that's such a huge deal for a lot of these kids who maybe have never had this type of experience before. I grew up in a place where I was very fortunate to have resources like a rock climbing gym, like access to American Ninja Warrior. And I mean, even when I started training for American Ninja Warrior in 2014, there were no Ninja Warrior gyms that didn't exist. You had to like join random Facebook groups and message people and say like, hey, can I come try out your very like maybe not quite safe OSHA approved like salmon ladder in your backyard? Sure, come on over. Like Wednesday, it's free. And now there's these gyms that you have put the time, energy, resources, and funding into building here in Puerto Rico that I think will not only enable these kids to like, you know, push themselves in whatever sport, Ninja Warrior they want to do, but also realize like, oh, mentally I can make that shift. I can overcome obstacles. So I think that is going to be so huge, and we have no idea what the, you know, after effects of it are going to be. We're still feeling them right now. But seeing those kids just have that ability to come in there, try out their strengths, find out some of their weaknesses, pick themselves up, try, fail, try again, succeed, build friendships and connections on this course that is really, really well designed. And we had Julio come in and do some really good coursework and design and change it up so that each time it was coming around, it was just like a fresh, brand new course for them. They got to like play around on. And then for me, the experience of being in Puerto Rico was just like, wow, like this is a place that is always able to redefine itself. And I think that for me was like really cool to see, you know, people like yourself step up and say, hey, we're going to make this really cool course. We're going to invite people from not only the island, but like from mainland US as well, and bring in all these people and resources and just get excited about it. And
So
seeing,
you've been in a lot of courses. How does
yeah.
it stack up with other courses that you've gone through?
Oh, like this obstacle course?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, I think the biggest thing was that it's actually like incredibly safe. That's one of the bigger pieces. But also that it's really modular, and obviously it's something that I think as a teacher of engineering a lot about. But like the ability that the course was able to change every single round of the competition like really quickly to something that was similar to what it was, but like totally different at the same time, where the competitors constantly had to readapt. That was huge. And a lot of courses that are out there, like it takes a long time, even if you have an amazing course set up, to change one thing, because you have to go up there and there's a lot of rigging and there's a lot of like metal pieces that move around. But the ability of this course to like constantly be able to change, and kind of like a metaphor for my experience of being in Puerto Rico as well, is like ability to adapt and change and provide resources and opportunities for people to like find what they're interested and excited and passionate about, and create positive impact. That for me was the coolest part.
Okay. And I got the video of you whipping through the course. You went through it so incredibly fast. I think you were the fastest. So
Thanks.
that's when I said, like, maybe this course is too easy.
Well, I think the cool part about something like Ninja Warrior, or any challenge or obstacle out there for that matter, is it's all up to your own perspective. Like some courses are designed to be so difficult that it's almost impossible to get through them. And some courses they may be on the easier side, but the challenge at that point doesn't become, can I do it? It's how fast or quick or efficient I can do it. And even when I was doing it, you know, I was thinking in my head, okay, well, I'm doing this really well and I feel like I'm executing and have good flow, but like, oh, that was a piece right there where I had like a little bit of a misstep. I didn't have my hand perfectly on that one. I had a little bit of a hop there. If I shave off a corner here, I could go a little bit faster. So even as I was doing it, I was thinking about the efficiencies that I could improve on for the next time if I were to do it again.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think we're just about up with time. So Josh Levin, American Ninja Warrior champion, rock climbing champion, educator, champion educator, teaching kids new ways to think and structure and be competitive in an AI future.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me on, Pavan.
Thank you, Josh. Cheers.